The VA hospital hummed with its usual quiet routine. The air, thick with the scent of disinfectant, carried the morning sun through half-drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the floor. 94-year-old Hank Thompson sat in his wheelchair by the window, his aged hands tracing the outlines of medals pinned to a faded uniform. Each one held a story, a battle, a lost friend, a sacrifice made for a country that now seemed to forget. The walls of the ward were sterile and silent, oblivious to the weight of his memories. But then, a familiar sound broke the monotony. The distant growl of motorcycles, growing louder, closer, until 15 Hell's Angels rolled into the parking lot. Their chrome glinted under the sun, engines rumbling in a low, controlled roar that made Hank's heart lift. Jack Ironjaw Mercer, broad-shouldered and calm-eyed, led the pack. Vietnam hadn't hardened him. It had tempered him. He carried a quiet authority, a deep respect for those who had walked the hardest roads before him. As they entered the lobby, Diesel, the youngest of the group, nudged his helmet in greeting. A mischievous grin played on his face, but his eyes held a profound understanding of why they were here. He knew the weight of this visit, the honor of spending time with Hank, a Marine whose stories had become legends among them, shaping their very idea of courage. But not everyone saw Hank that way. Nurse Claire Benson moved down the hall, her clipboard clutched like a piece of armor. Years of apathy and stress had built a wall around her heart, leaving her indifferent to the men and women she was supposed to care for. To her, Hank was just another patient. Frail, forgetful, easily dismissed. Hank's eyes lit up as Ironjaw approached. "You made it," he rasped, his voice rough but warm. Diesel handed him a small embroidered patch that read, "Forever Faithful." Hank's fingers brushed the stitching with reverence. "You boys don't forget old ghosts," he murmured, his eyes misting over with memories of comrades long gone. The bikers settled in around him, filling the sterile room with laughter and stories. Their presence brought a warmth to the cold corners, breathing life into the quiet space. For a moment, Hank wasn't 94 and stooped in a wheelchair. He was a young Marine again, standing tall, feeling honored, and truly remembered. But just outside this fragile circle of camaraderie, a storm was brewing. Claire watched from the doorway, her eyes narrowing, her face a mask of irritation. The day that began with routine and friendship was about to become something far more complicated. A test of loyalty, honor, and the courage to stand for what's right. The laughter in the room suddenly faltered. Hank, his frail hand shaking, reached for his cup of water. It slipped from his grip, spilling across the floor, the droplets scattering like forgotten memories. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice soft with apology. But Nurse Claire's patience had worn thin long ago. "You old fool!" she snapped, her words cutting through the room like a knife. They were sharp, cruel, and heavy with years of indifference. Before anyone could even process what was happening, her hand struck Hank across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in the quiet ward, a sharp, ugly crack that hung in the air. The room froze. The 15 Hell's Angels, who had been standing casually by the door just moments before, went rigid. Diesel's fists clenched at his sides, the veins in his arms popping. But Ironjaw raised a hand, a silent command for calm. Hank's face flushed red, but his eyes, though shocked, burned with a quiet dignity forged in a lifetime of battles. "Don't make trouble for me, son," he whispered to Diesel, his voice steady despite the sting on his cheek. In the corner, Sarah Lawson, a volunteer nurse, stood frozen, her phone trembling in her hand. She'd seen Claire's cruelty before, but never anything so blatant, so brazen. A line had been crossed. Oblivious to the gravity of her actions, Claire muttered something about losing control and stress, completely failing to see what she had just done. The air in the room grew thick, charged with unspoken fury. The respect that should have been a given had been shattered in a single violent motion. Hank's hand shook as he touched his reddened cheek, but it was the silence that screamed the loudest. The bikers understood immediately. This wasn't just a minor lapse in judgment. This was an assault on honor, an attack on a man who had spent his life defending others, and it had been witnessed by men who would never, ever let such an injustice stand. In that single instant, The ordinary morning at the hospital transformed into the crucible for a reckoning, one that would demand unwavering loyalty, unbreakable courage, and the resolute will of 15 men bound by a code older than any rulebook. The stage was set for action, and no one was turning back. The slap echoed in the sterile hall, a sound that seemed impossibly loud against the quiet hum of hospital machinery. 15 pairs of eyes, previously relaxed and friendly, sharpened into points of steel. Diesel's knuckles whitened as he gripped the handles of Hank's wheelchair. Ironjaw's jaw tightened, his calm mask now edged with something cold and hard. Hank sat shaken, but with his dignity intact, whispering again, "Don't make trouble for me, son." His words were meant to protect them, to defuse the situation, but they couldn't shield the bikers from the outrage of what they'd just witnessed. Their friend, a hero who had stared down death in battle, had just been struck by a hand that was supposed to heal. Sarah Lawson, the volunteer nurse, pale and trembling, took a step forward. Her phone, which had been recording the entire encounter, was pressed to her chest like a lifeline. "They need to see this," she said softly, handing the device to Ironjaw. The bikers crowded around, their large frames hunched over the small screen, watching the reality of Claire's cruelty magnified. Every frame, every sharp word, confirmed what their eyes had already told them. Respect had been violated. A line had been crossed, and action was unavoidable. Ironjaw's gaze swept across the room, taking in Hank's stunned face, Claire's defensive posture, and the other silent witnesses. The tension in the air was so thick you could choke on it. "This isn't just a nurse losing her patience," he said, his voice low but commanding, resonating with absolute authority. "This is an attack on everything he's fought for, and we will not let it stand." Diesel's youthful fire was ready to explode, but Ironjaw's steady presence kept it in check, channeling it into focused resolve. The line had been drawn. There would be no argument, no negotiation, no delay. Their code, a creed of justice, loyalty, and honor, demanded a response. Outside the room, the faint rumble of their waiting motorcycles seemed almost prophetic, a low warning that the bikers were ready to move. Hank's weary eyes met Ironjaw's, and in that silent, powerful exchange, a decision was made. The confrontation had escalated far beyond an apology. The bikers knew exactly what needed to be done. The ordinary hospital morning was over. A reckoning was about to begin. Ironjaw took a step forward, his presence filling the room like a wall of unshakable authority. "Hank stays with us. No one touches him again," he said, his voice calm but absolute. The other bikers formed a protective semicircle, their leather-clad frames a silent, intimidating warning to anyone who might dare to challenge them. Diesel moved close to Hank, steadying his hands on the wheelchair and offering a quiet, reassuring smile. Claire began to stammer, trying to justify her actions. He spilled the water. He provoked me." Her words trailed off, faltering under the collective weight of 15 men's unwavering gaze. Ironjaw didn't bother to reply. Words were unnecessary now. The code they lived by demanded action, not argument. With deliberate, respectful movements, Diesel began to wheel Hank toward the exit. Ironjaw and the others flanked him, forming an honor guard of loyalty and muscle, blocking the path behind and to the sides. Even in this small hallway, their presence was overwhelming, a testament to the unspoken creed they followed: protect the innocent and defend the honorable. Sarah, the volunteer, stepped forward again, holding up her phone. "The video's already online," she said quietly. "People are seeing what happened." Ironjaw gave a slow, deliberate nod. Digital proof, combined with their physical intervention, ensured that the truth could no longer be ignored or swept under the rug. Outside, the engines of 15 Harleys rumbled to life, a rolling storm of power and purpose. Diesel carefully helped lift Hank onto a flatbed truck they had prepared, his movements precise and gentle. Ironjaw oversaw the entire operation with unwavering focus. Each biker knew their role. This wasn't chaos, it was a coordinated, controlled action, guided by respect and honor. As the convoy moved onto the streets, it commanded attention. Pedestrians stopped, drivers slowed down, and the hospital staff watched in stunned silence from the windows. This was not an act of vengeance. It was a declaration. It was a statement that disrespect would not go unanswered, and that a life built on courage and service would be defended at all costs. Hank, surrounded by men who in that moment felt more like family than friends, felt a warmth spread through him that he hadn't known in years. For the first time that morning, he allowed himself to relax, trusting these guardians to carry not just him, but the dignity of every soldier who had ever worn the uniform. The action was swift, precise, and resolute. The message was clear. Some lines, once crossed, demand more than words. The convoy rolled to a stop outside the hospital's main entrance, engines vibrating like thunder across the asphalt. Hank's wheelchair was carefully lifted down onto the pavement. Diesel steadied him while Ironjaw, the leader, surveyed the scene with unwavering intensity. The hospital staff had gathered at the doors, their whispers and shocked expressions filling the air. Every eye was on the group of leather-clad bikers, 15 men who radiated authority, loyalty, and a quiet, righteous fury. Claire Benson, the nurse from the viral video, emerged hesitantly from the hospital. Her usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a visible fear as she realized the full scope of what she had provoked. The video on Sarah's phone, the one showing Claire slapping the elderly veteran, had already begun its rapid journey across the internet, exposing her cruelty to the world. She opened her mouth to speak, maybe to apologize, maybe to defend herself. But Ironjaw's voice cut through the tension like steel. It wasn't loud, but it was commanding. "You struck a man who defended this country before you were even born," he said, his words landing with palpable weight. This wasn't just anger. It was an unyielding moral authority that silenced everyone present. In his wheelchair, Hank's weary eyes glistened with tears. He looked at the bikers surrounding him, these men who had come for him, a stranger. "You boys. You remind me of what I fought for," he whispered. The words carried the weight of decades, of sacrifice, pain, and pride, finally being acknowledged in one breathtaking moment. Diesel, one of the younger bikers, gripped the wheelchair handles tighter, his youthful energy brimming with restrained emotion. "We've got your back, sir. Always," he said, his voice firm and certain. Around them, the other bikers nodded in silent agreement, their engines idling like a chorus of solidarity. Each man stood as a shield, a silent testament that disrespect toward a hero would not go unchallenged. Just then, the distant rumble of more motorcycles grew louder, adding to the gravity of the moment. Fellow bikers from neighboring chapters had heard the story. They were converging on the hospital in a massive show of support, their engines echoing like a rolling anthem of justice. The crowd of onlookers grew larger, people pulling out their phones, snapping photos, recording this incredible display of loyalty, honor, and courage in action. A small, proud smile broke across Hank's face. He rose slightly in his wheelchair, his voice trembling but strong. "Thank you," he said, "for showing me I'm not forgotten." The bikers exchanged knowing glances. They understood that this was more than just a victory for one man. It was a statement for all veterans, for every quiet act of courage that demands respect. In that instant, the clash between cruelty and honor reached its peak, and the world outside those hospital doors saw what true loyalty looks like. 15 men, soon to be hundreds, standing united defending not just a 94-year-old Marine, but the dignity of every hero who ever fought and never asked for recognition. By late afternoon, a cautious calm had settled over the hospital. The echoes of motorcycle engines and confrontation had faded. Claire Benson had been escorted from the building, her arrogance stripped away by the undeniable weight of her actions and the viral evidence that sealed her fate. The hospital administration issued a formal public apology to Hank, acknowledging the terrible wrongdoing, while Sarah Lawson, the young woman who filmed the incident, received recognition for her courage. Hank sat in his wheelchair in the hospital courtyard, the warm sunlight on his weathered face. The familiar rumble of Harleys was gone, but the spirit of the bikers lingered. Ironjaw leaned down, resting a steady hand on Hank's shoulder. "You earned this respect, Marine. We just reminded everyone else," he said gently. Hank's eyes shimmered with tears, a mix of gratitude and pride. The bikers hadn't just defended one man. They had ignited a ripple of awareness, a powerful reminder that respect for our veterans is non-negotiable. In Hank's name, the bikers launched a new program they called Operation Iron Honor. It was a promise of continued support for veterans everywhere, ensuring that their stories, their sacrifices, and their dignity would never be overlooked again. Diesel adjusted Hank's cap and smiled. "Feels like home, doesn't it, sir?" he asked. Hank nodded, his chest rising with a newfound strength. "It does," he replied, his voice clear. "It really does." As the group prepared to leave, Hank's gaze lingered on each of the bikers. It was a silent acknowledgement of their loyalty, their courage, and their heart. The streets would return to their quiet routine, but something fundamental had changed that day. A community had remembered its heroes. A hero had been honored, and the line between indifference and respect had been firmly redrawn. The day ended not with chaos or anger, but with dignity restored, lives touched, and a lesson in honor that would echo far beyond the hospital walls. Hank Thompson, at 94 years old, had been seen, defended, and celebrated. And in doing so, he reminded the world that true courage and loyalty never, ever fade. This story shows us something powerful. True respect isn't earned through titles, rules, or authority. It's shown through action, loyalty, and courage. Even in a world that often overlooks the sacrifices of the brave, standing up for what is right can restore dignity, honor the past, and inspire others to do the same. It reminds us that one act of injustice can be met with an unwavering wave of support, and that brotherhood, honor, and empathy have the power to heal, protect, and transform lives. Courage isn't just found on the battlefield, it's in defending those who can't defend themselves, and in remembering that every life shaped by sacrifice deserves our recognition and our reverence. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please share it to spread the message of respect and honor. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that matter. See you next time.